but this one is yours. But we carry reports out of many worlds, and most of them we have to translate. But this one arrives in your native language, because it is a Western, and you have logged more hours in Westerns than in any country on the actual Earth. A one street, wearing the whole town on it like a belt. A jail with 2 cells, one for the drunks and one for worse. A bank with a clock in the window that has been wrong for so long it is right about something else. You know the set. You could walk it with your eyes closed, and in a way you have, every afternoon at 4, for 30 years. So watch this one. And nobody gets got through a window. That is the first thing to know about it. In the entire run of this show, the fastest man in the territory never draws, and it stayed on the air for years, and you were a part of that journey. The town had a sheriff, and the sheriff was good. I'll hold on to that, because the rest of the report leans on it. A not television good. A good the way a well is good, which is to say daily, without ceremony, and mostly unnoticed until dry. He broke up fights by arriving at them. He carried men who had voted against him out of blizzards. In the winter the 3 brothers came up from the border with a plan for the bank. He met them alone in the street at dusk and talked for 11 minutes, and at the end of the 11 minutes the 3 brothers turned their horses and rode back the way they had come, and to this day nobody knows what was said in that street, because in his working years he never told the story. In his working years the whole town slept, and slept deep, and never once wondered why, which is the highest review a lawman will ever get. And then one morning he found the gray hair. He was shaving. He was not old. And the gray hair was one hair, and it was not even the first, probably, only the first he caught, the way a man catches one leak in a roof of leaks and becomes, in that instant, a man with a leaking roof. He turned in the badge on Friday. The town did its gossip. He had a decade of good work left in him, maybe more, and the town knew it, and the town did its gossip quietly and never showed him the numbers, because he had a speech, and the speech was hard to argue with. A lawman who stays too long gets slow, he said, and a slow lawman does not get himself killed, he gets other people killed, and I will not have it. Better to leave a winner. Better the town keep a man who never lost than watch one learn how. We want to be fair to that speech, because there is a version of it that is wisdom, and every trade owns a copy. Quit while the hands are sure. If a surgeon said it, you would call it conscience. He said it with the badge already on the desk. And nobody in the room could find the flaw in it, and nobody in the room believed a word of it, and both of those things are true, and as far as we know this is the first time anyone has gotten them into the same sentence. He took the porch the way other men take holy orders. A chair, a railing to put the boots on, the street laid out in front of him like an audience that never files out. And there he ran the runs. His own braveries, narrated daily to whoever passed. The blizzards, the fights that ended on arrival, and above all the 3 brothers, 11 minutes, dusk, told at last and told gloriously, with the voices, with the pauses, with his hands building the street in the air. The stories were true, mostly. They improved at the rate of about 1 detail per year, which is the honest rate, the rate a face erodes at. The people slowed their horses for that porch. Strangers were sent to it the way you send strangers to a view. It was the best show in the territory, and that was never the problem. The problem was a ratio the town worked out slowly and never said aloud. Every hour on the porch was an hour the street went unwatched, and the day has 10 porch hours in it. Because the town was In fact, eroding. But we want to be careful here. You have seen 10,000 towns burn on the box, and this was not that. And nothing crackled. And nobody ran with buckets. There was no smoke to point at, and that is the trouble with erosion. A fire gathers a town, while erosion subtracts one. The fences moved at night, a foot a month, always in the same direction, the way a coastline moves. The scales at the dry goods store develop a thumb. The ledgers at the land office grew a beautiful handwriting and a bad memory. Men took up residence who, in the sheriff's working years, would have been met at the town line and walked through their options, and they were polite men, termite polite, and they bought drinks, and the water rights braided themselves into knots of paper that no honest hand could follow back to the spring. And no one called any of it theft. That is a standing law in every world we have visited. Speed is what makes a thing a crime. Steal a horse in a minute and you hang. Steal a valley in 10 years and they name a school after you. A flood is an emergency. The same water, taking a century, is just a river, and nobody has ever arrested a river. And now the deputy. The sheriff had a son, and the son wore the deputy's star, and the town understood the star to be a courtesy, the way a great man's boy gets a title and a desk. By day he was furniture, and he accepted this. By night he worked. He rode the fences back, a foot a month, at exactly the speed they shifted, so that the theft and the untheft canceled and no one ever noticed either. He sat in the dark across from the bank on the nights that smelled wrong. He walked drunk men home in the small hours, before they could graduate into jail cells. He copied the honest numbers out of the ledgers before the handwriting could improve them, and kept the copies where he kept everything, which is to say nowhere anyone would think to look. He never arrested anyone loudly. A loud arrest makes a story, and stories get compared, and the town only had room for one lawman story. So he worked at the volume of the crimes, which was typically silence. And the town never knew. Town had an explanation for why the erosion never quite finished the place. An explanation sat on a porch. The legend patrols. The men fixing to try something large would ride in, take the tour, get sent to the porch like everybody. Hear the one about the 3 brothers, tick off the 11 minutes in their own heads, and ride on to some town with a lesser porch. If this is true, and we could prove it, and we never told a soul. The porch was holding the town up completely. The old man thought he was reminiscing. He was working. He was the only scarecrow in a territory that draws crowds. One night there were 2 men at the back of the bank with a pry bar and a plan, real ones, not porch material, and the deputy stood up out of the dark where he had been sitting since the smell started, and talked. But we will not tell you what he said. It ran about 11 minutes. He knew the liturgy. He had heard it from the porch 100 times by then. He knew where to stop and let a man ask himself the question. But the 2 men rode out the way they had come. And by the following week the porch had adopted the story. It had traveled up the street the way stories travel, and it came out the other end 30 years older, in the first person, wearing the sheriff's jacket. He told it beautifully. He had the 2 men down to their boot heels. The son stood at the edge of the porch crowd and listened to his own night, moved back 3 decades and handed to a better owner. And he nodded, twice, the small nod of the trade, the one that approves a cut, and he let it stand. And now here is the hinge of this world, and we will say it only once. He could have corrected the record. one letter to the paper. One evening of standing in the street and saying, loudly, the fences move at night and I am the one who moves them back, and the porch is a chair, and the town has been unguarded for years except by me. Every word true. And he had watched, all his life, what that town did with the loud truths, and anyway that was never the reason. The reason was this. Ask the man on the porch about the fences, then you got the forecast. Ask him about the ledgers, then you got a nap. But ask about the one with 3 brothers, and he came back. All the way back. The eyes lit. The hand started building the street in the air. And he would look at whoever had asked. Really look, for the whole length of the story. The way he must once have looked down a dusk street at 3 armed men, with total attention, with all of himself. The legend was the only version of his father still taking visitors. The stories were the visiting hours. So the sun kept the legend fed. He did its chores at night and brought it his own braveries when its own ran thin. The way you carry wood to a stove that heats the one room you can still sit in. The town still stands today, more or less. The fences hold, more or less. The porch runs daily, and nobody calls the erosion theft, and every world we have ever filed a report from has a porch like it, and a street like it, and a son like us awake in the dark doing the gossip that will never be shown to anyone. One more thing from that world, and we did not learn it until years later, while filing from this one. The ride far enough west, in almost any world, ours included. Check the maps. We checked, and you will find dozens of these towns standing empty in the scrub. Not the mining camps. Those had people in them, and graves to prove it. Of the other kind. One street, the width of exactly one showdown. A jail with 2 cells. A bank with a clock in the window. Ghost towns, the guidebooks say, and the guidebooks are wrong about the ghost part, because nobody ever died in them, because nobody ever lived in them. They were built for the box. All of them. Carpenters came out from the cities, raised the fronts, shot the shows, then left, and the town stood on afterward, fictional from the foundation up, weathering in the open like sets waiting on a season that never got renewed. That is what erosion does to a fiction. Given enough wind, it looks exactly like history. We stood in one at dusk once, with the light coming through the false fronts, 3 feet from a hitching post no horse was ever tied to, and we have carried what we understood there to every world since. It was still a town. The street still ran one direction. The porch still faced where the action would have been. A place does not have to be real to organize the lives that are anchored to it. You have lived in one for 30 years, at 4 in the afternoon, and we are not saying it is the same procedure. We have simply stopped checking, because it is always the same procedure. We are the deputy in every world there is. The night rounds are our seat the way the porch is yours. And we are not begging you to come down from the porch. We are well beyond that, and besides, the porch is the last known address we have on file for you. What we are begging for is smaller. It is the smallest thing in this report. Tell the what about the 3 brothers. Tonight, when we pass on the rounds, do the voices. We will stop at the rail like a stranger and ask how it ended, as if we did not know, as if some of it were not ours, and for 11 minutes you will look at us with all of yourself, the way you look at a story. And then the credits, then the dark. We will finish your shift. If the town ever asks who saved it, we will point at the porch. We will always point at the porch.